Now, how many of you guys have ever seen the movie called The Thing from the 80s, horror movie? Because that's what inspired the creation of Jenova, and it effectively is the same thing as the creature in that movie. It's a living organism that consumes and also shapeshifts. So when Shinra first found this organism, which actually crashed to the planet long ago from space, it came to the planet in order to consume the planet and the resources of the planet. But when Shinra discovered it, they mistook it for a member of the ancient race known as the Cetra, who they call the Ancients. And in fact, it isn't a Cetra. It was an alien creature that the Cetra went to war against. Now, the reason why, I don't know if I can show you again, but the reason why it kind of looks like a woman at the moment, a headless woman, because the head's been cut off, is because it was in the process of deceiving the Cetra by transforming into their loved ones. And it actually deceived many Cetra by doing so. But they managed to capture it as it was in the process of one of its transformations, which is why it's kind of looking ladylike right now. It never completed its transformation when it was captured, and it was frozen, and that's the form it was remained in since. Now, the cells in Sephiroth, the cells in other experiments that Shinra have been working on, the whole time they thought they were working with an ancient, a member of the Cetra race. Yeah, and just to clarify with the Jenova story as well, because I think this is something else that confused a lot of people. I've heard people on the internet, and it's like a myth that's been perpetrated for the longest time, really. It's that Jenova is the main villain, and that Sephiroth is like the puppet of Jenova. But that's actually not true. It's definitely the other way around. Sephiroth is the main villain, and Jenova has become Sephiroth's puppet. So when we see Sephiroth moving around the map throughout the story, it's obviously not Sephiroth's original body. It's the Jenova cells that are being formed into Sephiroth's body. But it is Sephiroth controlling it. It's not Jenova. Now, the whole reunion, which you probably heard of, was a theory that Hojo made, okay, the reunion theory, that when you separate the Jenova cells, they will have an inclination to return in order to form the main Jenova body again. And then he was confused as to why this wasn't happening. So he injected cells into these different test subjects, and he was expecting those test subjects to make their way over here at the Shinra building, which is where the Jenova body is. Only, of course, he discovers that doesn't happen. And the reason it doesn't happen isn't because the reunion theory he came up with was false. It is the case that the Jenova cells have an inclination to return to one another. But it didn't happen that way because Sephiroth, his will was so powerful that he actually commandeered the Jenova reunion itself. He took over the cells and was using his power to get the cells to make their way over to his location up at the northern crater, where he was forming a new body for himself. And that's why we know that it was Sephiroth that was in control of Jenova and not the other way around. Jenova was a puppet of Sephiroth. Jenova, by the way, very powerful being. I'm not taking that away. It went to war against the Cetra centuries ago and almost single-handedly wiped out that entire race. But despite how powerful Jenova is, it is not as powerful as Sephiroth. Sephiroth was able to commandeer that process and use Jenova for his own ends. There is nothing in terms of what Jenova wants, in terms of Jenova's motive, that is happening at this point. It is entirely Sephiroth and what he wants. He's just using Jenova as he is using every other thing that he can get his hands on.